Hey everyone, we are back for another episode of the Growth Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, David March, Coach Dave March, they call me, author of the book Vision in Action. And this podcast, we talk about how people are bringing their vision of business into action every day. And today we have a special guest. It is Victor. Victor is the CEO and founder of Agenda, which is a branding agency, and he helps others find your awesome and make it obvious. Victor, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience here?
Well, thank you, David. Thank you for having me. As you said, I'm Victor, and founder and CEO of Agenda, a branding agency in New York City, and we love what we do, and look forward to this conversation and see how we find you're awesome, both in theory and also in practice for companies, and how we apply it to people. So that's our game.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. More and more I see personal branding being a really important piece, especially as our lives are increasingly more online. People need to really kind of, get online and get with the program about personal branding. And so, that being the case, what are some of the things that you're seeing, some of the trends that you're seeing in personal branding, and some of the kind of tips you could give people on how to find your awesome and make it obvious.
Right. I mean, I delve on personal branding sort of on my personal time. Typically we do it for businesses, quite large businesses, middle market businesses and corporations. But I do think deeply about personal branding, because it's, if you are until you are able to articulate what you stand for, what your value is, what is it that you bring to the table, it makes it difficult, frankly, to be happy. And I don't say that lightly. One can sustain oneself through life doing what we need to do. We go to work, we have our families, significant others, our friends. But when you are on your own, trying to decipher what's next in your life, unless you have clarity of purpose and clarity what you bring to the table, it makes it's difficult, because it's difficult to make decisions. You have to start from the beginning every time, because you're not quite sure. Where if you know what you stand for, what you awesome is, it's very simple to say, I don't belong there, I don't want to go there, I want to go there, it's going to push me, but I know that's my space because that's what I bring to the table.
Yep, yep,
And those kinds
yep,
of things. So it makes it
yep.
easy to make decisions.
Definitely, definitely. And I think there's different ways to say this too, in the sense of when you're saying bringing out your awesome, is that also like saying like your zone of genius?
Well, one could call it that way, but it's about, you know, it's either bringing out something or creating something that you want, right? So brands, we extract what exists, or we create a framework to become something. So, not everybody is lucky enough to know who they are at 21. You are in the process of becoming, right? And that process sometimes takes people a lifetime, and never get there.
Uh-huh.
Others start when they're 40, In my case, I started at 50, like, so what you're awesome is really, you know, all the things that all your experiences brought to the table in a way that's suitable to you. And that creates friction. But it's also creates a lot of satisfaction, because it's not about creating something from scratch. I tend to call it, is about, in the case of people, it's about remembering your experiences, remembering the things that make you feel alive when you were a kid, remembering the things that sort of pushed you back, the things that move you forward, and then deciding what to leave behind and what to carry on with you. So it's a process of becoming. If
Love it,
we
love it, love it. Yeah, I mean, That sounds great. That sounds great. And then yeah, in doing that, there's a process of like kind of learning more about yourself
Mhm.
and learning about what is draining your energy, what is giving you back energy. What's energizing to you and what's draining for you. So um yeah, that's not always easy to tell. It's very subtle. It's very subtle.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's very subtle. And this is why, we you hear so much about practicing uh, presence and stillness, because it's very difficult to catch the subtlety in
Hmm.
the sort of in the cacophony of our lives, right? So
Yeah.
you need to create those spaces to listen better to yourselves, to your surrounding, to your story, because it is in those tiny spaces where you find your awesome, right? It's hard work, but it's really rewarding. Really,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's so true. Yeah. Um, how many people, especially in today's society in America, really sit in that silence and sit in this stillness. Everything is go, go, go. Let's go as fast as possible. You know, um, especially, I don't know. You said you're in New York City.
Yes.
Oh, New York City is the place. It's like the fastest place in America. People are just constantly moving.
Well, you'll be surprised. You can walk alone in a crowd, right? New York City. It's pretty amazing in that regard. It, People don't look at you, right? So you are alone. But yes, we feel that we don't have the space and the time, but we do. We
Hmm.
do. It just takes practice, right?
Hmm.
The reason why we're so, understanding why we just have the feeling that we must continue moving constantly, when it's not true. I remember I have a doctor, a friend of mine, years ago when I was early in my career, he was my roommate, and I was really stressed. I had these emergencies. I had emergencies. I had these clients was the clients were calling with changes, and I needed to be there first thing in the morning to get the changes by, before the day started and so on. And it was a constant nag of my emergencies. And he finally stopped me and he says, "You don't have emergencies. Your emergencies are make believe. I have emergencies." He's a doctor. And it's just that moment. I mean, we have responsibilities, and other people have emergencies, but no one is going to die if the change is not made, right? That's an emergency. So it's just shifting the perspective of the things that we have in front of us. And
Yeah.
for that, you need either a friend to call you out, or for you to give yourself 5 minutes a day to think through these things. It
Hmm.
doesn't take a lot.
Yeah, and from a coaching angle, that's really important too. Having the person to hold you accountable, having a person to kind of um, be like a thinking mate, if you will. And I think that there's also an aspect of people not understanding what coaching is, even after all these years. It's after all these years, I feel like I got into coaching like 2014, and I thought it was early. But I thought it was really early then. But still, like almost 10 years later, it's like people still get these things confused, like difference between coaching and mentoring.
Hmm.
Um, you know, to me, coaching is more about the self-awareness, creating more the self-awareness, like you're saying, kind of understanding yourself and all these things.
Right.
And mentoring is more like telling somebody else what to do or how to do it because you've been there, done that.
Right. Correct.
Uh, you know, and so people, I think, have a hard time with that. You
Yeah.
know, what do you think about this?
I think about this all the time. So to me, it's finally clear. So typically it's coaching and mentoring, but it's also coaching and therapy, right?
Yeah, coach.
So,
Yeah,
right. So
it's
what I
true.
always say, therapy is all about the past. I have no business in the past. Your past is your past, and we need to acknowledge it and honor it, right? Coaching is all about today and tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Today
Mm-hmm.
and tomorrow. What do you want to do today? What do you envision for yourself tomorrow? And you are 100% correct. Mentoring is about sharing my experience in
Mm-hmm.
your context. I love mentoring. I've been doing it naturally for decades. Right? So
Yeah.
you share your own experience with whatever situation you are in, and hopefully it leads you forward. There's no science to that. And I've been lucky enough to have the trust of many mentees, and it's been my sort of the most satisfying part of my job over decades. It's my ability to mentor and to share my experience with others. But back to coaching, that's it. Coaching is all about the future, the today and tomorrow. And tomorrow, it's about tomorrow and the day after, right?
Yeah.
It's not 10, it's not years ahead, because we can only prepare to learn to receive what we have in front of us so much. But that's where the wealth is,
Yep.
back to the presence, to the moment of sort of silence, to the uh, being available to receive everything that's going around you. So
Yeah. Yeah. The presence is a big piece, right? It's like, to have presence. There's a lot to that. There's a lot to it. It's it's one of those things where it's like easy to say, just be present, be present. But if you're actually present, there's so many things going on in your mind, and different things like, and I need to go here, I need to go there, and I think that but it's especially if in business, it's important to really become present and feel, okay, what do I need to do now? What do I need now at this moment and tomorrow? Not in the next year, 5 years. Really, what can I do now to kind of move that needle forward?
right.
And that's, yeah. Sometimes you can get distracted by all the different things that are going on, and you know it's challenging. And speaking about challenges and stuff like that, I know you've definitely you've had some great experiences in your life. Talk to me about some of the challenges you had and some the lessons that you kind of gained from those challenges.
I mean, and I don't, the different kinds, right? Um, and they all sort of come back to my sense of self. Now I know, right? Because typically, I'm an immigrant. So when I came to the United States, I wanted to belong, right? I wanted to be part of whatever that was going on. I wanted at ease. I wanted to walk into a room and not feel watched,
Mm,
right? I don't think I was being watched, but that's how I felt, right? And how you feel is that forms your reality, right?
hmm.
So I
Yeah.
started to behave like I was being watched, or I was very self-aware of how I sounded, right? So those things really prevented me from belonging fully in my work. Not so much with my friends. That's different because I have friends from all stripes. I was lucky enough for that. But I think so. The first set of challenges came from that sense of being quite ambitious. Knowing that I wanted to make something of the amazing opportunity that was before me, being in this country, studying here, working here, and I consider myself through the whole process really lucky, right? But I never let luck be the determining factor. You had to put the work. I was lucky to be in the room, but once in the room, I needed to do the work. So being in that room took 15, 20 years, not knowing quite my space in the room was, right? And the reason now I can see is because I was in that room in service of me.
Mm.
I was trying to become, to belong, to grow, to get, to obtain, right? I had this checklist of all the things I wanted to do. And lo and behold, you start checking that list off, and then you go, and now what? And you start to sort of, now you're in the room with the keys, and now you are in there in the service of others. And it's so much easier and much more satisfying. And I wish I had known that when I was younger, right? So I was lucky enough to have amazing mentors who taught me one thing, and that was, don't walk into any room trying to get. Walk into a room seeking to give, whether it's with a client, with a friend, with um, uh, whether it's in coaching. If you are seeking to give, you will naturally get. It's a real conundrum there, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
particularly if I have my kids now are young adults, going to interviews, and like, don't go there trying to get the answer just right, to tell them exactly what they want to hear what they want to hear. Tell them what you're bringing to them, but not by saying it, by showing it. If you are, a people person, but show it. If you are interested in human behavior or science, show it by the way you present yourself, not by saying it. So, which goes back to presence, right? We're talking about earlier. So, I don't want to, we'll stop on the challenges. So, all those challenges that were sort of external challenges, self imposed challenges, became later challenges of growth, how to become fluent on myself, fluent in my language, in my thinking, in what I was feeling. I was always very close to my feelings. So that was the fluency that came first. And then that fluency in relating to others. And ultimately that led naturally to leading, right? How I lead is with all of that, with my whole being, with the way I think, I feel, I relate, I communicate. So, and then, you know, I being around amazing business people to understand how to build a framework, how to put all of that into a framework that my employees can understand, and that helps me stay on track, right?
Oh
Because
yeah.
it's very easy to say we are about all of this, okay, but how do you stay there? Which then in turns come back to something we said earlier: is it helps us make decisions really fast, really easy. If a project comes in and it's not in our lane, or is not something that aligns with our values, well, we already know what our values are. We already know what our lane is because we know what our proposition is. We know what our capability is. So we can say no like that. Don't need to sweat it, you
Yeah.
know.
That's
And long,
that's actually that's actually a great point. Because sometimes, being a yes man gets you in trouble. Saying yes to everything gets you in trouble.
uh,
Uh,
well,
yeah.
and it's tied back to you. We started to talk about personal branding, right? Why are you a yes man, right? It's, oh, I'm worried about the bills, or I want to be liked, right? I don't want to be rejected.
Mhm.
So this is all part of your ethos. Like, if you can quite actually articulate why you are a yes man, it might be, I need the money, right? And you can say, okay, that's why I'm doing it. So be honest, right? Say, and how am I going to make the money? Then you can sort of be very clear about it and say, okay, and what are my limitations around this? Because the problem is when you are the yes man for the money, and then you take the abuse, and you take, all the things that come along. And that's where the problem is. Like, I don't have a problem with people wanting to make money. I want to make money.
We're in business to make money.
Right,
We're
right,
for-profit
right.
companies.
So it's just about putting a little bit of context around why you want to make money, um, and hopefully tied to who you are. Maybe you want to make money because you care about your family, right? And you have to pay the bills. But maybe you want to make money because you care about yourself and you want to show up differently. Well, that's okay too, as long as you know, because then the money is just a conduit, right? It's the end what really matters. And if making the money prevents you from getting the end, I'll tell you an example. I have a mentee, and it's a young lawyer, and he just passed the bar. He's very dynamic and super ambitious. So I said to him, "Tell me something. If you had, if you achieve everything that you want, and you had all the money in the world, what's the first thing you would do?" And without blinking, he says, "I'll go traveling." So I said to him, "But why don't you just go traveling now?"
He didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to do when he
He
said that.
didn't know what to say.
He
I
didn't know
mean,
what
it's
to say. He didn't know what
absurd.
to do.
It's an absurdity because he needs the money to travel, but the point's still the same. The end goal is the ultimate thing, not everything in between. And he was losing sight of the end goal. I didn't know what his end goal was, but he said, "I want to go traveling." Then don't be rich. Just spend all your money in travel when you have a vacation, and then you're happy. I mean, right?
Yeah.
That's it. At the end of the ultimate analysis, that's what you end up with. So,
Wow.
uh, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's powerful words right there, man. Definitely, get people to assess their priorities. Like, what do you actually want to do? Kind of thing, you know? Um, yeah, I mean, that's huge. That's huge. And going back to what you were saying a little bit before about leadership. This is the how you lead people. It's what I like to talk about as well, and the growth mindset podcast here is leadership, because there isn't a lot of content on good leadership, unless you're a person that really likes to read, industrial organizational psychology books. Um, if you're just like, not really getting into it on your own, the type of leadership that you typically see, generally is more fear based, and it's more fear based because fear is a great motivator. Um, but I mean, that's not really where we want to be. You want to be leading with a vision, and having some inspiration, and things like that. And it sounds like you have an understanding of what that looks like. That good leadership.
I have a version that works for me,
Hmm.
and it didn't come. I haven't tried to articulate this cleanly, but let me try. I think men in particular, right? We are brought up with this notion of man up, boys don't cry,
Yes.
go and kick some ass, right?
Yes.
That's sort of which kind of it tells us what's acceptable. So, what that gives us is strength, or a sense of strength, a sense of toughness, but also a sense of emotional invisibility,
Mm.
right? Because then you start to suppress any feeling that is counter to those things,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
anytime you try to anytime that try the sort of surfaces a little bit, there's a little bit of shame and guilt,
Mm.
right? Because that's not, you are not supposed to be that way, right? So just think about it. If you're a little boy crying, you're mocked because you're weak. If you are fearful, you are, I don't know, you're doubtful, right? If you seek comfort, you again, it's not good, right? Because emotions are dangerous. That's how we are brought up. I don't care where you come from. Emotions are dangerous. So we learn to suppress those emotions. And society then rewards the opposite of it. I mean, whether it's in our political environment or, in the corporate environment, that is what we reward. Well, I'm strong. I have no emotions, right? So it's very hard for a leader in that environment to say, man, I'm having a really hard time. I need some help. Or I don't have answers for that, right? Because we are programmed to drive outcomes, not to set an emotional tone, not to make people feel seen, right? But I think the moment you are aware that you actually can change the emotional framework under which your people work, and you make people feel seen, they behave differently. They have your back,
Yeah, seen and
right?
safe. Seen
Yeah,
and safe. Yeah,
right,
that's his main thing. Yeah.
right. I read somewhere it says that your boss um, has a bigger influence in your psychological health than your therapist or your psychologist.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I once was that boss, driven like crazy. I didn't intend to drive people crazy, but just my language, my attitude, my drive, it made people feel like they had to be there early, they had to stay there late, they had to do the work that I would do because I was doing it. And I thought, I'm helping my people work, so I work late with them. No, they're working late because I'm there. Because I have no framework for making decisions. And every
Mm.
decision is last minute based on what comes in front of me. So they don't even know what I'm thinking because it's no framework. They don't know what's right or what's wrong. Only I know.
Wow.
That is really taxing on leaders and the people they serve.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Wow.
So,
Well, that is fantastic. Yeah. Do you want to add something else to that?
that I would just wanted to kind of get to, the point of the, the vulnerable leader, the leader
Yes, the
who,
vulnerability,
that,
100%.
and it's so easy to say it lightly like that, but it's really, really powerful.
Mm.
Um, to accept after a lifetime of being told not to be vulnerable and then to have all the answers, to then show up and say, I'm sorry, I don't have all the answers.
Well, I mean, I think that historically, vulnerabilities when shown are like trampled on,
Right,
you know, and that's what people see most of the time, and they're afraid to be vulnerable in in any kind of situation because you're you're essentially opening yourself up for attack. Um, but at the same time, it's like it's a measure of a person, and you really get to see the character of a person that's going to hit someone when they're down, when they're vulnerable.
right,
So that's a really big piece too.
right. And it's also how societies label things. We have this whole idea of like uh, power skills and soft skills,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, soft skills,
Yeah.
technical skills. I
Right,
haven't
right.
heard power skills.
Well,
Power
because
skills,
I'm just thinking about it that way because I think like emotional intelligence is often defined as a soft skill,
soft
and
skill. Yeah,
and to me, it's a power skill,
it's more of a power skill. I like that. I like that.
right?
It's a
Not a technical
different
skill.
different
You're
view
right.
on it.
Yeah, it's a power skill. Like it's emotional intelligence requires fluency, requires a growth mindset, right? To get to that space where it feels really uncomfortable, because that's when you're actually growing, right? And to be emotionally available as a leader, it's not easy and it doesn't feel nice.
Yep.
It just doesn't. Like
Yep.
breakups don't feel nice, but they are necessary, right?
Yep.
uh,
Yep.
so to build that emotional resiliency, it requires that you go through that process, where you can sit in the uncomfortable space, because that's how you grow it. And it's not something you can go and get in a book. And that's the other thing about leadership. So much about leadership education, it's technical. Do this, do that, keep a mind on this, keep a mind on that, go and take that class, get that coach, right? And do
Yeah.
this, the 360 thing, but you're still an asshole.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, because it's technical. I mean,
Exactly.
it's a good way of looking at it. It's a good way of it's a good perspective. And yeah, most people are technical, and in that way, the way you're saying it, it does seem like it's more like cognitive, more thinking, and so what I'm picking up from what you're saying is more along the lines of, embodying the leadership instead of just having it in your mind. And technically, this is what I know I have to do, but getting into the as as Michael Beckwith would say, the feeling tone of it, the embodiment of it. And that's going back to like subtleties and all this kind of stuff as well. It's not easy to really feel that feeling tone, if you know what I mean.
Right, right. And it takes courage, right? It
Courage,
takes
yeah.
courage to throw yourself there and say, I want to do this. And then, because it's not going to be easy, and then you're going to walk into rooms that you have no control over, and you're going to start to have to label things that you never labeled before. And I mean label by, you need to call them out, because until you put a name to something, it doesn't exist, right? So like, you can label that feeling as fear, and now you have a fear. But until you say it's a fear, it, it's just a level of being uncomfortable. But the moment you
Mhm.
call it, it's a fear I have of not being seen, for instance. Now you say, okay, and what am I going to do with this? But until you label it, it just becomes a thing that you have managed all your life, right?
Wow. Well, well, Victor, I mean, I think this conversation has been quite insightful. Um, I typically like to keep these around the 30-minute mark, sometimes less. Um, but I think we gave the audience a tremendous amount of things to ponder about. And this is going to have a lot of replayability. So it's going to be great. As we kind of uh, phase out here on this episode, um, are there any kind of final words or final encouragement, or maybe a quote or book that you would want to share? And then also, you should share some ways that people can contact you, people could find you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn. Hit me up on LinkedIn, Victor Rivera, Agenda. Um, no, I mean, it's just what I said. I think, to pay homage to your growth mindset podcast, um, growth doesn't always feel like progress. It often comes masqueraded as confusion, discomfort, doubt. And when that happens, it's you're no failing. You're just getting good at it. You're getting fluent at it, right? So stay with it, stay the course, and that's the win, to stay, to bathe in that discomfort, because that's where true growth comes from. So
Yeah, yeah, and just stick to itness, as we said, is so key, and it's difficult to keep going sometimes, but yeah, that's where the growth comes in. Uh, so yeah, thank you so much again, Victor. I can find you on LinkedIn. And yeah, for now, this is us signing off on the Growth Mindset podcast. Thank you so
Uh,
much.